What's up, everybody? It's Tony Moze, the rhyming book reviewer, and today I have on my show Uli Cohen, who is the founder of Subway Book Review. First off, let everyone know so they get a little more personable with you. Who is Uli Cohen, and what got you into the concept of Subway Book Reviews?
Well, I started Subway Book Review in 2013, and it was really my way of getting accompanied with the great city of New York. And from there, it has become a larger cultural observation that I've now extended to other cities like London and Mexico City. But what it's centered on is really to find a shared cultural object like a book, and to explore lives through that lens. So I would say, in a very simple nutshell, I talk to strangers on the subway about their book, but in a greater cultural context that is definitely meant to share and find the stories that can inspire us and that can also bring us closer together.
You talked about in another discussion about books being an extension of an individual. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that when you walk into someone's home, you see their bookshelf, you kind of get who they are. And I think that that's really true. A book is an extension of our mind because it's what feeds our minds and our souls. So it's almost like, it can be compared to when I see a person with a book on the subway, that compares to also, are they wearing a cool jacket? Or what sneakers do they have on? Or, carrying a book is very similar to how we dress. It's an expression of who we are. Mm-hmm. So, but it's an expression of our inner self, I would say.
I noticed in my experiences seeing the whole realm of readership, there has been a rivalry between fiction versus nonfiction readers. One believes they are better than the other. What type of genre of reader are you? And do you feel one genre is better than the other?
Oh my God, I love this. You're like, there's a rivalry. This is great. You're a good newsman, Tony. Is there a rivalry between fiction and nonfiction? I definitely can say that I'm seeing a lot of nonfiction memoir stories and books that are memoirs and nonfiction books on the subway. Recently, a book reviewer told me something that I thought was a really nice way of putting it, because also within the nonfiction, it's not just memoir, it's also poetry that's having a moment. And what he said to me, he was a super dope young man with the most fabulous hat, by the way, and tremendous Baroque coat. And so, of course, I was like, I got to find out what this man is reading. He was, maybe in his early 20s. And he told me, sometimes fiction is just too narrow in its narrative. And sometimes you need something that gives you more breathing room, which a memoir or a poem does. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was an interesting way of putting it. I thought that it was fascinating that he said, well, a narrative fiction piece can sometimes be really specific in the identity it discusses. And it can be more difficult to attach to that. And so that is, again, just such a cool testament to how especially young people are using books in terms of this exploration of the self, right? And the own identity. So I think, as for myself, I'm a voracious reader of both. I really love a tough story in terms of I'm not so much reading I'm reading for entertainment also, but I'm really reading for the unique perspective and insight into a life that I know nothing about. And I personally, I'm reading both, and it depends on what life and what perspective I'm curious about at that moment. So at the moment I'm reading, or this summer I read more Latin American writers because I was heading to Mexico. So I felt like I needed to, get acquainted.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I was initially a
fiction reader. Then I got into nonfiction because of graduate school and, of course, undergrad through my studies. I started reading a lot of personal development books. But now I'm seeing myself wanting to do both because I do see fiction as a great access. I'm a creative person. I do rhyming book reviews, which is hip hop,
That's right.
also acting. So it's like it taps into the creative side I once knew since I was 9 years old, going to a performing arts school. So like reading those books again, like opens my mind to like the many possibilities that the brain can fathom. It's awesome. So I definitely would tell people not to neglect either. Like, I mean, that should jump into both genres personally, because I think that they're both an asset.
I totally agree with you. And while you're at it, like also like get into, I don't know, get into Spotify or SoundCloud or whatever, and like also listen to, I kind of tried to, as I was getting into the Latin American writers, to also get more into like what's the music scene doing there, and like you said, you rhyme your book reviews, like that you're a writer in your own right in that way, like it's so easy to forget that writing isn't just happening on a page. Writing also happens, in a verbal way, and in a way where people write essays or an article, or it's so much richer than just the book life. Though, of course, the book life is tremendous and fantastic. But, yeah, we need to keep in mind, like, how people are expressing. And, like, sometimes that can be an Instagram stories. Sometimes that can be a 500-page epic. Sometimes that can be a rhymed book review. It's all valid.
Who has been the best Subway book review encounter, and what book was it?
Woo! Tony, I had a couple. Let's see. Well, I recently had a really lovely encounter, and that was with someone who I had previously met probably 2 or 3 years ago. And it was a young guy in like his punk rock t-shirt reading Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass. And he was really cool. He gave me a 1-sentence book review, but I think it was just very fitting for Leaves of Grass. And he said, reading this feels like looking at a painting for a really long time and then being really satisfied by it. And I was like, okay, that's really nice. Short and sweet sometimes does the trick. And he was on his way to band practice and, had these cool suspenders on. And, like, he was just, like, a cool character. And then I ran into him this spring or summer, and he had gotten married. He didn't have the punk rock t-shirt anymore, but he was still playing in a band, and like him and his wife were reading this like very subversive book together, and that is really sweet, like to also see someone again and seeing them grow up, like that's why to me the Subway is almost like a town square, or like a marketplace. Like it's a gathering spot where we all come through. So yeah, that's really sweet. Or like I really love seeing people again and again. Like some people I just keep running into, and I'm like, how can that be? On like totally different train lines and totally different parts of the city. Like that's really nice. But I really love when someone's just like a really, strong character, that like New York flavor. They're doing something different. They're going for it. They're unapologetically themselves. They dare to look different, or they dare to say something that's just really the truth for them. Like that to me is like a very Subway book review.
What do you think the reading culture will be like in the future?
I do think in the coming years, there's a tremendous opportunity for us to get more diverse stories written and created by people of more diverse backgrounds. I do think that we're going to consume our media in topic bubbles, if that makes sense. I think it's going to be interesting because I think those topic bubbles are going to have micro themes within them, in terms of, what I saw this year was, well, I'll tell you last year, because this year I'm still kind of digesting, but last year it was, of course, on race and identity and feminism and identity, which makes perfect sense, and I would say that's the micro bubble within the larger topic of identity, of course. So I think I think it's going to be really, I think it's going to be great. I think maybe books are going to become more visual, And I think maybe there are going to be more books that offer, shorter stories to make a point, in addition to, the larger epics that are always going to be created by novelists. But I'm really excited by that. I think that coffee table books had a strong entry into the book world, and I'm, really curious. Like, does that mean that comic books are maybe going to come, into our lives in a totally new way, or like video stories, and movies and films are more and more going to be based on books, or I really don't know, but I think that in general we're going to connect our media more closely together, and because of that we're going to have more variety, I think.
What is your favorite book of all time?
Tony, favorite book of all time is so difficult. I can't do that. I cannot do that. But I will tell you some books that this year I have really tremendously enjoyed, because I really think, and someone said this to me, again, a fantastic book reviewer on the subway. That person said to me, it's not about liking or disliking a book. It's about learning from a book. And not in like the boring educational way. It's about what can you draw out of a book for your life that you would not get from any other place otherwise. So I will tell you that as an author, Dr. Maya Angelou has opened my perspective up tremendously. I believe that a book that this year particular hit me at the perfect time was Exit West. And then I think another book that hit me at the perfect time, because it, came into my life right as I was reading about the wall potentially being erected between Mexico and the United States. Again, I was heading to Mexico for that reason, because I wanted to get acquainted with our neighbor, was Guadalupe Nettel, who is a most awarded and well-known Mexican writer. And her book, The Body Where I Was Born, just hit me again at the right time. So I don't believe it an all-time favorite, but I do think that books can be milestones in your own growth.
Some of these questions are a little bit gathered from, people, but, when I hear them in the street, oh, what's your favorite book? What's a book that you would recommend? And I'm like, oh, well, it's hard for me to answer that. I sometimes I have to break it down, but like, well, it depends. What do you want? What are you looking for? What's going on in your life at this moment, that perhaps I could recommend you something, in a bubble, in a genre, but I can't just tell you exactly what's that one book, because every book is so amazing,
Yeah. What's a book that made an impact on you this year?
This year, it Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Mm-hmm. And that book came out years and years ago. But, that's what I mean. Like, it's not about the publication date. It's like, when does it make an impact in your life? When does it come into your life, and when does it make an impact? What did you love about that book?
Exactly. So I noticed that when I was just doing, hip hop, or when I was going about life in a certain manner, I had like no aspirations or goals. I just had no clear thought of what I wanted to do. But the way I was going about it was all wrong, because I didn't discover my why. My why is definitely the reason that propels me to keep going, especially with rhyming book reviews, since I'm the one that's just doing it. I'm really doing it like consistently. Like I have to remember, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to inspire kids from from low income to know that books is gonna be your mentorship. When I was a child living in Yonkers, New York, a very tough neighborhood, I just thought that was my life in life. I was either going to be in a gang, I was going to be in jail, or I was going to be dead. But thanks to books helped me to change my mindset. And so, like, going back to the whole why, I want to also be that change, that catalyst to people who are not in so fortunate areas. Like, Start With Why is also reminding me, and it gives me, for example, from other like leaders and people who've made, people who've been successful in all different types of areas, whether it's financially, whether it's a business, whether it's their mindset or whatever, that, if you remember your why, like, you can never falter to anybody's criticism, their opinions. You'll take it, but you'll remember, why are you doing this? And it's a foundation, so that book to what I've been doing these days.
That makes perfect sense. I think that anytime we do anything, it has to be greater than our own cause, you know? It needs to tap into something that you really do for other people. And you can be an example of it. Like you said, you know, I'm the kid from Yonkers who wanted to be an example for something else. And then you went and you're doing that, which is tremendous.
What would you recommend to someone who is new to reading, or recommend to someone who may be interested in books but still needs a little encouragement to go read a book?
That's a great question. Let me think on that. What would I recommend to someone who's getting into reading and who maybe has a hard time with it? Is that?
Yeah, because okay, so let me give you a little background. I have people who are like, I have two types of people I've been noticing. One is like, oh, I don't know, I would never want to read books. It's so boring. That's what I'm hearing. All right, that's one. And then the next one is like, you know, I wouldn't mind reading a book. I mean, I just don't know what to read. I don't even know. I'm not used to reading anyway. You know, like I like those people because that's the first people I want to get to first. The ones who at least have a little inspiration, or at least have something in the back of their head that says, I know I should be reading because I know I need to improve my life in some kind of way or whatnot. Like, what would you recommend that individual to finally nudge them to be like, you know what? I should go check. Like, what's the reason why?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because one of the things that you said is reading is boring, might be the person's point of view, right? And I think that what reading requires is an environment where you actually can read. So I would first say, sure, find a book, but also it requires you putting your phone away. And it requires you maybe sitting down for, you know, it's kind of like meditation, I would say. You know, it's like you don't have to read a whole book in one afternoon, but like you start with reading for 10 minutes and then you get into it by making time to read for 30 minutes. And then maybe, you know, you find yourself just being so into it that you keep going for a whole 2 hours and the book draws you in. I do think that it requires, like, you know, like meditation for the people who, you know, who are not, let's say, into it, you know, like trial will be amazing. It's not like you're going to run a marathon without ever having walked even 10 blocks, you know. It's a focus and a mindset that you got to get into. But then I think in terms of topics, there are so many cool writers out there who are writing about things that are specific to such different lives now. I think that going to a bookstore, the bookstore employees are dope people. They know what's up. If you're like, here's some stuff that interests me, you know, they can make a recommendation. They can help you find stuff. That's why they're there. That's the benefit of walking into the Strand versus going onto Amazon, you know? So and if you don't have a Strand in your neighborhood, you know, check out what's there. Try to have a public library. Those people they're cool people. Like they're there to help you find stories, you know, and make recommendations that are good for you. But also just pick some stuff up. Keep the receipt. If you don't like it, bring it back. You know what I mean? Like, don't be shy about it. Like, and then, of course, like, go to Subway Book Review on Instagram and check out what other people are reading and see why they're reading it. You know, like, that is an access point to get a short little bit on a book. There's other places out there. Be curious. And then don't be afraid of it. If you hate a book, you don't have to finish it. You know, like, it's all good.
Yes. And so, thank you very much for all this, Uli. I appreciate this. So here's my gift to you before you leave the show. And I did a rhyme for you. So check.
Oh, I can't wait.
Check it out. This is a rhyme I wrote for you, Uli, and everyone else at the Subway Book Review. Uli Cohen, this a lady I'm truly knowing, is duly noted. You'll catch her in a movie showing. She's like a celebrity, and we must agree with this. With her eagerness, she's breeding kids to believe in readership. Like her initials and this interview, you be seeing this. And also you be seeing this. You need to rewind and find when you're reading this. When I'm reading, I'm still seeking even other reading lists. Just believe in what you're seeking and you will be reaping it. If you're having a tough day and mad that it's Monday, then I just must say, head down to the Subway where your life changes and your outlooks are new. Go meet Uli Cohen from the Subway Book Review. Go meet Uli Cohen from the Subway Book Review. Go meet Uli Cohen from the Subway Book Review.
What? Tony, this is incredible. You're going to make me cry on the show? What? That is phenomenal. Thank you.
This interview was brought to you by Why We Buy by Paco Underhill. Where can people contact and find you, Uli?
The best way to get in touch is through Subway Book Review. On Instagram, there's a button. It says email. You can press it. It will go to me. So that's a good way to do it. We have a website, subwaybookrareview.com, at Subway Book Review on Instagram. And then I'm at the UBC on Instagram myself. So I'm an easy person to get in touch with, Tony. Yeah. The one thing that I will say is the one thing that I cannot provide is book reviews, as in like blurbs of people's books. I get that inquiry quite often, and I'm sorry to say I don't have the woman power. I don't have enough moments in my day to provide that at this moment. But if people want to collaborate, if people want to bring me to their city, if people have ideas for how we can make reading a better experience for more people, I would love to hear from you.
Once again, everybody, it is Uli Cohen, and it's Tony Moze, the rhyming book reviewer.